listening to the GHT Overland podcast. Be sure to tag us on the social medias so we can see what kind of awesomeness you're up to. Hashtag GHT Overland. This episode is brought to you by GHT Overland. Please keep in mind we'd love your support. Keeping all the algorithm spirits happy is kind of necessary. So if you wouldn't mind, at minimum, Level 1 Love is taking a second to leave a rating on iTunes or the podcast platform you listen on. Anything from a short little I like it to whatever you're feeling. Without constant love from you, we're just sludge at the bottom of a lost cold coffee cup. Level 2 Love is found on GHTOverland.com. This is where we maintain a list of recommended apps, books, and gear. Thank you to everyone who has used these links. This also helps us earn a commission, costing you nothing extra. Level 3 Love is on Patreon. This is your opportunity to support the GHT Overland podcast with monthly little thank yous that help us pay web hosting fees, podcast hosting, and all the things that keep the podcast growing and improving. This is also how you get your hands on some sweet swag. Thank you for joining us as we pursue a renewed life mission of putting the best in people and nature on display, while tackling the ugly Goliath of today, by consistently placing positivity and respect for others in front of everything else.
Hello from the cool coastline of Trinidad, California. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, about 64 degrees with sunny skies, after a driving day that doubled as a brainstorming day yesterday of what's working, what's not working, what's going to plan, what's not going to plan, and how to wrangle all those things into one corral.
Yippee! Yes, there's a whole lot to kind of pull it all into one ball.
Well, it's kind of weird being on the West Coast again. It was kind of cool to see the Pacific Ocean for whatever reason. I think we both were kind of like, hey, we're back on the coast. This is weird. But it's also equally weird that we stopped for lunch, and I think it was like 90 something and hot. We were trying to find shade. The next time we got out of the truck, it was still sunny and oddly turned to like 64 degrees.
Yeah.
That was weird. It wasn't a surprise to you?
I mean, it was. Like...
You're acting all cool and casual.
Yeah. It was refreshing, is what it was.
So anyway, today we're going to discuss the realities of change. Our new plan to keep the podcast fresh and consistent, with updates on places we've been, things we've done, and the cost of doing all those things. And of course, your feedback is always appreciated, as it has always been a guiding compass for us on how we shape the podcast. Here's our number one hope: consistency. The number one thing we've failed at for the last month or so. So behind consistency is allowing the podcast to evolve as we do. To date, we have about 120 episodes on how to overland travel, giving all of us tips and inspiration and basically 120 different ideas on how to do all those things. What we're finding is the added complexity of scheduling interviews with other overland travelers while we're also traveling, never knowing when we're going to be in range of a solid cell phone signal connection, is not working because Lisa is so good of finding places on iOverlander that are remote and gorgeous. Nice work.
Thank you. I'm taking you to enjoying that moment.
They're quiet.
Quiet.
There have been some nice rivers.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a volcano.
Yep.
Crater.
Yeah.
A crater. There's been desert. There's been, in our opinion, perfect forest atmospheres. And oddly, none of these places have cell phone signals.
Nope, they don't.
Not a one of them.
So that's something I also noticed was getting used to not being connected. That's been a little challenging.
More so than you might think.
Yeah.
If you've not done this before, and if you were to say that to us even 2, 3, 1.5, 4 months ago, we kind of go, oh yeah, okay. But thinking in the back of our mind, it can't be that hard. When you've spent the last however many years this technology's been around, consistently connected with family, with friends, with social media friends, with whatever that may be, and then you just immediately strip all that away, and you're trying to do a podcast,
yeah,
and schedule interviews, and do all these things that basically an internet connection of one sort or another kind of requires that you have.
A little hair-raising.
It's a little unplugging.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah.
So originally our hope was we'd be doing interviews with other overlanders as we went along. The reality is we keep finding epic cool places void of other people. And although, just to be fair, we have met numerous other travelers from Australia, from the States, from Europe, and those interactions tend to be reasonably short. And leading with, hey, do you want to do an interview for a podcast? Is kind of weird and not really our style. So that's not working out so good. Will we ultimately circle back to doing interviews with other overlanders from all over the world? Absolutely. Is this going to be our immediate future format as it has been since the beginning? No. It's just not working or reasonable for all the reasons mentioned above, so to speak. So you might be thinking, well, crud, what's the new format and is it anything worth listening to? Clearly, yes. We hope you find it worth listening to, but now it's time to either evolve and change or ferment in the past and just see what happens.
Ferment? Ooh, that's a strong word.
It's not a strong word. It's a very sweet word.
Well, if you're talking about fermented cabbage, that's pretty strong.
Oh, why'd you go to the cabbage? I was thinking of like fermenting beer, fermenting wine.
Oh, I first think of cabbage. I'm sorry.
Ah, you're weird. So in any case, regardless if you're new, a longtime listener, planning your overland adventures as we started doing that, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Whew, that was a long road. Or you're a seasoned overlander that's been doing this for quite some time. We hope you find value, inspiration, and maybe a laugh or two. And yes, you are free to laugh at all of our ridiculousness, mistakes, and goofiness. That's totally fine. That does not hurt our feelings one bit. We are very used to that. So here's the plan. Remember that long drive I mentioned just a bit ago, yesterday? That was from Butte Creek in Lassen. Is it Lassen?
Lassen, yep.
In the Lassen National Park to Trinidad, California. 332 miles that took 12 and a half hours with dog stops, lunch at a rest stop, another couple bathroom stops, a side trip to Eureka for an Amazon pickup of our favorite coffee. So Eureka is very fitting that that's where it landed. Coffee's expensive, so trying to keep the cost down as well. Like, our favorite coffee comes in, how big is that bag?
It's a big bag.
It's like a
bag.
1 pound bag, let's say.
Oh, gosh. I think it's bigger than that.
Well, you know what?
Why don't you reach up there and grab it?
We're not in a very big space. All I literally have to do is stand up open the cupboard, and grab the coffee. So this is a beautiful blue bag. It is 2.2 pounds of espresso from Lavazza?
Yep.
$27. All the other bags that we found from either a local coffee shop or from Starbucks, same 20-ish bucks to 25 and about the quarter of the size.
Yeah, like you're closer to a pound bag or less.
So, again, will we stop at local coffee shops and try their coffee? Absolutely, because that's just fun to do. Are we going to buy a coffee that's 4 times expensive that maybe is not as good? No. Any questions?
This aroma. If I could
they can't smell that through the podcast, Lisa.
Insert a scratch and sniff.
Well, then you'd have a bunch of noses sniffing. That'd be weird. Okay, where do we leave off? So we were taking this drive. It took 12 and a half hours with all these individual stops. We got the coffee. Then we landed at a casino of all places. As we're driving, we've had a few nights that, you reach that 10 o'clock, dark 30, and you're like, where are we going to stay? So we were thinking ahead. We're not really in a remote area. We're kind of closer to a bunch of cities, so how can we make this work? It was either going to be a Walmart. We stopped at a Walmart, and that was a absolute no bueno.
An instant put on the brakes and turn around.
Holy cats, we just landed back in Portland. But in any case, that wasn't going to work. So then we looked at, what about a casino? And bing, bing, bing. That worked.
Yep.
$20, 3 nights, 0 hookups. But that's okay with us. They do have water. So that's like our one Achilles heel is water. So that solved that problem. Internet connection is good. They even have a super weak Wi-Fi that's been a little bit helpful. So it's working out. We're getting caught up with some things. And where was I going with this? Let's try and stay on track.
Let's stay on track.
Thank you. So here's what we're going to be doing. I think what we decided, what we agreed upon in this 12 and a half hours of hashing things out, sometimes calm, sometimes not, because this is important to us. We're going to review the realities of full-time overland travel. That'll be a consistent thing to give you a view from our viewpoint of what that's like, because there is a difference between planning for it, watching what everybody else tells you, and at least in our experience, physically doing it.
Yes.
We'll discuss the places we've been, why we enjoyed them, what we did, along with all the little surprises and challenges we had to resolve along the way. No question, there's going to be a big difference between planning and dreaming of an overland trip and living it. Like those are 2 things. And I know that like we've heard that before from other people, but until you cross that bridge and go from, hey, get this, pavement to actual dirt that never ends without all the comforts of running water, a toilet, a large kitchen, the house that you live in.
Yeah.
Like all those things. And now you have to resolve a lot of those that you kind of took for granted and didn't really plan for. Big, big difference. Okay. So anyway, where was I going with that? Our questions would definitely be shaped differently in our past episodes if we had first lived the life before interviewing those who were doing it. So a lot of those responses we got were direct responses to our questions, but I think we would change those up a little bit and would have got different responses if we had lived it first. So now you will get that perspective covering the gap between illusion and reality.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Is that good?
That's a good one.
Yes, I'm going to mark that down. 1 for Chris. So, before we dive into the deep end, if you want to see our adventures, we're on episode 8 on YouTube, the 4th installment of our full-time travel. And we suspect that YouTube will always be a few episodes behind the podcast. So just a heads up on what to expect there so you're not confused. YouTube videos will release each Sunday at 6 a.m. Pacific time. The podcast will now go to an every other Thursday format, releasing at 3:20 a.m. Pacific time. And I am happy to tell you why that very odd time to anyone that hands me a gluten-free IPA.
So leave your comment below where you're at. And
No. They have to hand it to me, so it's only in person.
well, I know. I was going to say.
Oh, did I cut you off?
You did.
Again.
Let us know where you're at, and we'll meet up for that gluten-free IPA.
No, they have to come track us down. I'm not putting forth any more effort here.
Well, right now we're on the California coast, so if anybody's near.
Anyway, it was just a funny comment. But there is a reason we do that, but that's for another story. Lisa, we'd always lead with a positive. So as normal, you get to go on the springboard first. What have been the positives for you over the last couple months that we have been living full time in Chief Victor?
The freedom to move when you want to just pack it and go to a different spot.
Yeah.
Like
we're done with this.
It's been awesome. Like
pack it up and go.
If it's a spot where you're like, oh, one day's good, let's move tomorrow.
And we've got it down to about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Down from original 2 hours. Oh, that was ridiculous.
Or you can say 3 days, and that's where we're at now. So the freedom of movement.
Got it. Anything else? Is that like your one thing?
I would say, I think changing your thought process because you have to make income on the road. I mean, unless you have an account or pot of money you've set aside that's all you're going to use, and then you're done traveling. But we want to continue our travel, so we have to have an income while we do it. Changing your thought process in how can I contribute to that? So for myself, you're into photography. You're really good at it. I have photography in high school. It's all a blur. However, I found myself really liking getting shots that maybe you don't get from a different perspective. So there's that.
Well, probably because you take 600 pictures to my every one picture.
Yes, I do.
You won't stop taking pictures. And I think it's really cool that when you're free to do whatever it is you're doing, sometimes a unexpected passion may arise. And for our listeners, they may also find when they finally have the freedom to do basically whatever they want to do, and they're kind of living their life's dream, they may also be surprised on things that come up. They're like, I never realized that this was so fun. They may find things that they find happiness in that they didn't previously know was something that they would enjoy to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. I stepped on your toes. Again, nothing new. Go ahead.
No, I mean,
back on the springboard you go.
That's the example that I would use.
Okay. What else?
So another one would be having the sun schedule your day. Like,
true.
When the sun rises, if you get a peek in the window and it coming at your eyeball, oh, it's time to wake up. Or you sleep in for another hour.
It is nice not giving two cabbages what time zone we're in.
Two cabbages?
Yeah, you brought up cabbage earlier, so I thought I'd reuse it.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a recycled cabbage. Enjoy it. But when the sun comes up, I mean, no matter where you're at, the sun goes up, the sun goes down.
Yeah.
For most of us, we're daytime people, so when the sun comes up, we get up, and when the sun goes down, we kind of chill, and then we get tired, and then we go to bed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter what time it is.
Right.
Yesterday, we just realized it was Friday.
I know.
We're both like, I thought it was Wednesday. Yeah. So you do lose track of time, and I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else?
Seeing all the fabulous places. It's just, they've been all amazing in their own way.
Yeah, it's it's fantastic and weird that our new phrase has gone from "you've got to be kidding me" to "that's amazing."
Yeah.
But consistently over and over again, we find ourselves saying, "That's amazing," just either under our breath or out loud in the things that we've seen and done.
Yeah. I mean, I think I probably have said this before, but when you're in school and you learn about different places and geography and, about the United States, that's one thing. Like an example would be Grand Canyon. You get the rocks and the depth and the time frame and creation and all that. But when you're there, the South Rim is that textbook style, in my opinion. You feel the grandness and the depth and the rocks and the layers. And then when you go to North Rim, it's a whole different feel. It's like more personal. You're close up. There's more, to me, there's more foliage. So it adds a sense of freshness in the beauty. It's amazing. It's completely different than learning it from a textbook. Yeah. I'm in awe still. That's what I got.
I didn't want to step on your toes again. I'm trying very hard to keep my mouth shut. Anything else? You don't have to. Just whatever you're thinking.
I think it also, we've been close in our relationship from day one, but it also gives you a different level of partnership. Yes, we've lived 24/7, and then we work together. So we've had that, but it's a refresh sense of our relationship. That's how I'll put it.
Okay, let's not get too deep into that, but I don't know if most men would be the same. I don't really think anything is different there. Everything seems to be the same, but maybe you can explain that for the people that are like me going, what do you mean?
Well, it's like we closed a chapter of having a business.
We removed a cabbage load of stress.
That's exactly it.
A freight train size load of cabbage.
Yes.
Stress.
Yes.
Cabbage.
And that's what I mean, because it's like a new start. So we can breathe.
So what you're saying, if I can put this into man terms, if I may, you find the relationship between you and I is different, presumably in a good way, because we've removed most of the stress of our day-to-day living from our past.
Yes.
Okay, there you have it, folks. Anything else?
Oh, gosh. Chris, what about you?
All right. Well, as normal, I am very prepared here. Sun, clear skies, finding ourselves repeatedly saying that's amazing, and a new view to enjoy coffee over every few days has been amazing. Trick question, what is a decision we agonized over for years on doing this?
Our mode of transportation.
Oh, you got it right. That's amazing. The truck is working fantastic. The ability the available power to go over the mountains with ease, the exhaust brake keeping us in control on all those steep downhill twisty turns, the Hallmark camper, both together in unison.
Yeah.
In my opinion, are working perfectly.
Oh, I'd have to agree.
Super glad that we did the upgrade with the airbags, or that would have been a disaster. Super glad we did the upgrade of the shocks.
Yeah.
Or as we anticipated, all those gravel roads with the ruts,
The washboards.
washboards would have been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So that's been really, really nice. A few other things that I'd like to do in the future now that we know that this is going to work for us. But nonetheless, those are like the big things for me that are positives. Okay. Let's get into the dirty stuff. What are the negatives? What are some of the things that have been either unexpected or negative or challenging in some way since we've left?
Well, I think
This is where we need the Jeopardy song.
the first and foremost would be being away from our boys.
Yep. It's super nice to be able to either go to family and see them. I think even us, well, we'll just speak for us. We kind of took that for granted. It didn't really sink in until you don't have that luxury of inviting your children over for a Sunday dinner just to see their face and just to give them a hug. That is stripped away. And you have to be willing to accept that going into it and really think about it. So either you and or your partner, that doesn't turn into something that ruins the trip altogether. Right? What else?
Yes. Knowing that our truck camper, Victor, is the size it is, you make adjustments and changes to allow for the space. So it's not very big, but it's working. So I would say...
But let me put pause for just a minute. I want to make sure that we're being completely upfront and transparent. Should I say the man words, or do you want to dance around it with woman words?
The kitchen is too freaking small.
Thank you. The kitchen is like a 16th of the size. It's the reality of reality, but nonetheless, it's a challenge.
And it's working.
It's hard. We're making it work.
Yeah.
But
I mean, when you're in a house of 2,300 square feet and you have this huge kitchen
with a beautiful new kitchen counter that we just installed,
you get a little spoiled.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that would, in the sink, like when I go to do dishes, the sink suffices. It's just a little tight.
It's super tight.
But I make it happen.
And I am glad that you're in charge of inside stuff, because I've tried doing dishes a couple times, and about every 20 seconds, I bang my head on the counter thing.
Well, yeah, your height hits the uppers.
Nothing in life is perfect.
No.
Okay. Anything else?
I miss having a physical home to build, like the garden, and get my hands dirty and add those home touches to something that's fixed and tangible. I really found myself enjoying the remodel that we did. And I mean,
You are sick and you need help. How can anyone miss? Respect. But I think you need a psychologist, because that's crazy.
No, like, I loved it. Like an empty patio, and you fill it with these beautiful plants and flowers and make it a space.
I have an idea.
I am making this space. I've got a couple little green
I still have an idea.
plants and my string lights.
I'm just going to give it to you. We're going to find a fixer-upper. I'm going to leave you there to do your upgrading, remodeling, and all of that. And then I will continue to travel. And then when you're done, I'll come pick you up.
Really?
No. But in any case. Okay, anything else?
I don't think so. And Chris, what about you?
The big one for me are those dark 30 nights that we kind of talked about just a little bit ago, with no set place to camp for the night. So obviously missing family, missing friends, the boys especially, that was really tough, at least for me during Father's Day, not being there with them. But that aside, regarding the trip itself, man, when it hits dark and we still don't know where we're going and you're tired and you start getting grouchy, or quote unquote Chris starts getting grouchy, that's like the number one biggest challenge for me.
And not that we purposefully said we're going to arrive somewhere late. There were challenges
the way it works
leading up to that.
Or the drive was longer because you're stopping for the dogs, you're stopping to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Like one night,
we don't just go put the foot on the gas pedal and go until we get there.
Right.
So it changes things.
Example for that would be one night on Overlander, there were places along Highway 198 or 189. And as I'm looking them up with the connection that I could get every so often, then it would say it's closed. It's illegal. You can't park here. So we have to keep going. And then we thought, well, let's hit the campground. And we get there and the gate's closed.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, crap. Now what do we do? Well, you keep going. And you get outside that realm. And we found a spot.
Well, it always works out.
Yeah.
We did have a weak moment one night and we just got a hotel because that was quick and easy. But afterwards, I really regretted it just based on cost. But it was like the third or fourth time we had kind of hit that stopping point, and I was like, nope, this is just it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that we're going to need to drive at least another hour to 2 hours to potentially find something, and it's already 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for me. The space is good for us, but still clearly going from a house to a truck camper is a big adjustment. Minor, but it is a challenge. So for those of you that are in rooftop tents and doing this, respect.
Yeah.
We knew going into it that would not work for us, so we didn't do it. But every once in a while, I think about that and think about people that have done the entire Pan Am or have been in Europe or have been in Africa or whatever on a rooftop tent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, respect. You can't get away from the bugs. You're always cooking outside. Cold, hot,
dry, rain.
And I think that's why I'm so appreciative of our decision with the truck and the camper.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? That disconnect with mail and keeping up with credit card statements or other stuff that usually comes in the mail, even though we've moved as much of that as possible to electronic delivery.
Yeah.
Or like all of it for whatever reason. That's been a bit of a challenge with having our youngest son get the mail, and we try and go through that once a week with him. That's just kind of a pain in the butt.
It's different, for sure.
And then lastly, the thing that comes to mind, just keeping it relevant to where we're at today, the cost of gas in California is disgusting. We've paid as high as, and I'm just going to estimate here, $8.39 a gallon for diesel. And it seems to be an average of roughly $7.25 a gallon. And in my assessment, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so this is what happens. You then try and balance out that cost with taking other things out. So we've not gone out to eat. So that hurts like the local restaurants that are counting on tourist money. We're not doing, I don't think we've gone to one coffee shop in California. No, we haven't. So we're not doing that. We're definitely not going to buy any coffee here. So still trying to keep a budget together. The cost here is just ridiculous. You still got to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
You still need to get gas. We ordered coffee from Amazon, had it delivered because it's a quarter of the cost. So that's been rough here, just where we're at locally now. Let's go through some places that have really stood out.
Okay.
Thoughts?
It surprised me, but I think Great Reef National Park, it's a smaller one, was a surprise to me that I really enjoyed that one. It seemed more personal. And Vlasen Volcanic National Park we were just in, the combination of what it contains. How did you say it the other day? If Yellowstone and Yosemite had a baby, it would be Vlasen Volcanic National Park.
Yeah, because they had those little bubbling pools of clay.
Yeah, mud pots is what they're called.
Yeah, super fascinating. I didn't know anything like that existed outside of Yellowstone. Or Hawaii has got some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's like national parks like Lassen and Great Reef, and this is probably going to sound ridiculous to some people, but just not national parks that were ever on my radar. So when you look up a list of national parks, you're like, I never heard of that one, never heard of that one. Just because it's not popular on social media doesn't mean that it's not worth going to. If anything, it's probably more worth going to for people that are into overlanding, because most of us are going to want to be off the track, off the pavement.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that you're going to experience in these other, I'll say, less known parks.
Yeah.
Less people.
Yeah.
More dirt roads, more hiking.
Just as much or even more beauty.
Each one had its outstanding beauty in its own way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that one is more beautiful than another. They're just all different.
Yeah.
And it's what you go find.
Right. Don't pass it up.
It's so fascinating. I don't even remember what park we were at, but I think it may have been Yosemite, because there was a reasonable number of people there. We were somewhere just a little bit off the road, watching probably a creek, knowing us, over and over again. They would pull into the turnout. They would look out their car. Oh, nothing to see here. And then off they went. And I thought every single time, you have no idea what you're missing.
Yeah. You
have no idea. But I'm glad that you don't, because you kept moving and I don't have to share the space with a bunch of other people. That probably sounds mean, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. And that's happened a lot. Like, people come into these parks thinking that all the wildlife is literally on the side of the road, but it's not.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, anything else that really stands out? And I would say, while you're thinking deeply there, Lisa, overall, national parks, like if you're a quote unquote overlanding enthusiast, a national park tour may not be on your radar. It may, I don't know. In my opinion, overall, national parks are an absolute gem. Yes, there's lots of other amazing places. National parks are just a nice condensed place that offers some unreal experiences in a small space.
Yeah.
In like California, for instance, we're trying to get in and out quickly and efficiently because of the cost of being here is so high. We can hit these national parks and see some amazing things. California is a beautiful state.
It is, very much so. And the national park, just a tidbit, would be buy the yearly pass for $80.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And don't pay per park, because it's...
In 2.5 parks, you've already paid for it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Rough estimate. Yeah. So let's do this, because my brain needs to be more organized. The last place we were at was Lassen Volcanic National Park, not one that was ever on my radar prior to scheduling to go there, so to speak. But I would agree with you, those bubbling pools of mud pots were very unexpected and very, very cool. The same place that we saw a huge brown bear just roaming around. I didn't actually know the bears roamed aimlessly, like literally in circles.
Yeah.
I thought they were a little more focused on what it is they wanted to do. But he was super cool to see. What else did we see there? We saw a ton of deer. The lakes and the mountain backdrops were gorgeous.
Yeah.
The sunsets were amazing. That's where I got my first Milky Way photo that actually turned out. That was super cool. Those ice cold streams and lush meadows. It was an amazing place when you get out of your vehicle, when you go to that dead-end road, the road that may not be on the major maps. Like, we found what worked for us was to get the map when you first got into the park.
Yep.
Find a place to camp, go over that map like a fine-tooth comb, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And then decide on where we're going to go, but be flexible enough that if something else comes up, or if a road was closed we didn't expect, that we still had flexibility built into that plan, and that worked. I think we've finally gotten that down pretty good, and at last, and that was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So if another note, because I'm thinking of it, in each of the national parks, if you are truly an avid hiker, it's a mecca. There are trails everywhere.
But plan ahead, because a lot of them require, especially now, especially if you go to somewhere that's popular on social media, you're probably going to need a backcountry permit. There's probably going to be a limited amount of those. You may need to get it in advance. It may or may not cost you money.
Absolutely.
But you need to plan those things in advance.
Yes. Yes.
So when and if we go back to some of these places, I think that's the thing that will change, is we'll do a little more pre-planning than we already did and pick out a few really cool places to go hike. And we'll get those backcountry permits to go do that. Mm-hmm. But then we're also limited in time. We can't do an overnight because we've got the dogs.
Right. So
unless we find another solution, temporary solution for the dogs, that's going to be a limiting factor.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So we went to Lassen, and then before that we went to Sequoia and Kings National Parks. They are neighboring national parks.
Yep.
Don't know why they're separate, but they are. Good gracious. Have you ever walked into or stood next to a tree that made you look like an ant? Like, no kidding.
We have
They're
now.
So big.
Yeah.
That's Sequoia. Unreal size and grandness beyond. Like, you literally need to be there to experience it to ever actually get it.
Yeah. How
big they are. It was like walking onto a movie scene. It's like, who built this stuff? It was so big and grand.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've got a little video clip and some pictures when we hiked to, I want to pronounce it Boole Tree. I might be pronouncing it wrong.
Boole.
Yes.
You had, it was like a 5-mile drive in or something, and then another mile hike.
Yeah. But when you got there, it stood out prominent. It was gorgeous in its own way and just amazing. And then we had Luria with us, and she looked like a little ant sitting next to it. It was gigantic.
Yeah, crazy tune. And then before that, we were in Yosemite, right? I think Yosemite was the first park in California we went to, and a park that I've dreamt of going to forever. And it was fitting that this was also the first park I was able to get out for a decently long hike. Mm-hmm. Completely solo, and arriving at Cathedral Lake without a soul in sight. As one of the most popular hikes in Yosemite, getting up, in this case at 3 a.m. to arrive in the park before that 6 a.m. cutoff was well worth it, in my opinion, because we still had to do some circles, many U-turns in our adventures this time before we found the right parking lot for the trailhead, because they're doing road construction, so it wasn't where you would normally be. Mm-hmm. But we found it, and it was amazing. And we got away from the winds at Jute Lake.
Yes, we got away from the wind
that massacred Bungie. Bungie was severed in half.
Yes.
Trying to keep our door closed. Or open. Yeah. Oh my God, we still have the dust of June Lake everywhere. But in any case, let's do this. Before the episode turns into a 3-hour tour, I think we've gone through in this episode taking care of some housekeeping and some updates, which I think was really important to get done, because we're really in a turmoil about what are we going to do with the podcast? How are we going to get interviews? And we still do. We've got a couple interviews we're currently working on that should be really amazing. So that piece of interviewing other people is not going to go away. So if that's the primary reason that you tune in, no fear, that will not go away. It's just not going to be the primary of what we do. We need to evolve and we need to make something work. Hopefully, listening to our experiences, what we've done, the things we've enjoyed may create some sparks for you in what you might do, how you may go about doing it, and hopefully learn from the mistakes we make so that you can spend more enjoyable time doing those hikes, pre-planning some backcountry permits in national parks so you can get in and see some really amazing places that are, and I agree with, limited to how many people can go in there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to end up with crowds and crowds of people, and that's not really an experience I think most of us are really looking for. So we've gone through that. I think we reserve for the next future episode to really dive deep and get back to finances so that people can have an idea of what to expect in expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully some tips on balancing their budget to make sure that it works. Maybe some ideas on having some income to pay for their trip, if that's something that based on their lifestyle or their life situation that they need to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll set kind of a regular format, because that's what works for my brain anyway, of how we go through those things. So it'll be consistent for people. And then the schedule of when they release will be more consistent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So to close this one out, I'd like to offer this on what seems to be a trend on social media and shares the title of this episode: Instagram versus reality. In my opinion, we all set our own realities. If little to no crowds is your thing, all we've had to do is get up early and enjoy an afternoon nap. Hike anything about past a mile of paved path, you get away from the people. Sometimes waiting a few minutes for someone else to get a picture, or wandering around, especially in a national park. I'm thinking of Sequoia National Park. I really want to get a picture of these 3 trees together, but there's this family that's getting family pictures or people wandering around. Being a little patient, you can get that picture without anybody in front of it.
Yeah.
We've also planned our visits before peak season. I think that's a huge help. So I don't know, in the middle of July, end of July, 1st of August, in peak season, how long you may need to wait for that same picture.
Yeah.
It may be at 6 a.m. when the sun goes up, and then it's over, and then there's a gazillion people. I don't know. We intentionally planned on being there, not during a peak season and before fire season. So by being intentional has been a big win for us in setting our own reality on what we wanted that to be. So we hope that helps you. Thank you for listening, and all the best in your life adventures.